I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story. The day my own daughter looked me in the eyes and called me just a burden was the day something inside me finally broke. For 35 years, I had given Claire everything. My time, my savings, my dreams. I'd postponed retirement, worked through illness, even sold my beloved family home to help her succeed. But that rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I stood in her pristine kitchen explaining that my arthritis had worsened and I needed to cut back my hours at the clinic, her words sliced through me like a knife. "Mom, we can't afford to support dead weight right now." Dead weight. That's what 3 decades of sacrifice had amounted to. What she didn't know was that my name was on every deed to every property she thought was hers. Sometimes the quietest, people are hiding the most surprising secrets. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Patricia Winters, though most people call me Patty. At 63, I've spent most of my life in the shadow of others. First my husband, then my daughter. I was a registered nurse for over 40 years, working the overnight shift at Memorial Hospital so I could be available during the day when Claire needed me. My husband Robert passed away when Claire was just 12, leaving us with modest savings and a small life insurance policy. I promised myself then that Claire would never feel the sting of financial hardship. Claire was always bright, ambitious, and beautiful. When she showed talent for design, I paid for private art classes. When she wanted to attend a prestigious university on the opposite coast, I sold my wedding ring to cover the deposit on her dormitory. When she graduated and needed capital to start her interior design business, I mortgaged our family home, the only thing of value Robert had left us. "It's just a house," I told her when she expressed hesitation. "Your future is what matters." I never resented these sacrifices. Every parent wants their child to have more than they did. Claire's success became my purpose, and watching her business flourish brought me genuine joy. Her clientele grew increasingly upscale, her designs featured in glossy magazines. When she married Michael, a corporate lawyer from a wealthy family, I thought her happiness was complete. They built a stunning home in Oak Ridge Estates, the kind of neighborhood where even the mailboxes look expensive. I was invited for Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings, proudly watching as Claire embodied the success I'd always dreamed for her. What Claire didn't know was that I had made a single wise decision nearly 30 years ago. When Robert died, his colleague James had approached me about investing a small portion of the life insurance money in a fledgling medical technology company where he worked. "It's risky," he warned, "but the potential is enormous. With nothing to lose and everything to gain, I invested $10,000. Money I never mentioned to anyone, not even Claire. That company, Medinova, had grown exponentially over the decades. My small investment had quietly multiplied into nearly $4, $2 million. I never touched that money. I kept working night shifts, living in my modest townhouse after selling our family home, clipping coupons, and buying store-brand groceries. The money wasn't for me. It was Claire's safety net, her inheritance, my final gift to her. I planned to surprise her with it when I turned 65. But life rarely follows our careful plans. My arthritis had been worsening for years. I'd hidden the pain, taking extra shifts to cover the cost of medications without insurance. But that Tuesday, after dropping a tray of surgical instruments during my shift, my supervisor had insisted I take medical leave. "Patty, you can't keep pushing yourself like this," she'd said gently. "It's time to prioritize your health." I drove to Claire's house that afternoon, nervous but hopeful. Her business was thriving. Michael's law practice was successful. Their twins were in private elementary school. Surely they could manage without my extra contributions for a while. I'd been giving Claire $800 monthly since she'd started her business. Money she still accepted even as she vacationed in the Maldives and drove a Tesla. Claire was in her home office when I arrived, surrounded by fabric swatches and design plans. Her assistant, Margot, was typing notes on a sleek laptop. "Mom, perfect timing," Claire said without looking up. "Can you pick up the twins from piano lessons today? Margot and I are finalizing the Henderson project." "Actually, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important," I said, my fingers twisted together anxiously. Claire glanced at her watch and sighed. "Can we make it quick? I have a client call in 20 minutes. Margot discreetly stepped out, and I lowered myself carefully into the white suede chair opposite Claire's desk. Even that small movement sent pain shooting through my joints. "I've been asked to take medical leave from the hospital," I explained. "My arthritis has gotten to the point where I can't safely perform my duties." Claire's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. "For how long?" "The doctor recommends 3 months minimum, possibly. Permanently." The words felt heavy, final. "I'll have my pension and savings, but I wanted to let you know I might not be able to help financially for a while." There was a moment of silence, and I watched as something shifted in Claire's expression. The concern I'd expected was replaced by calculation, a quick mental assessment of how my situation would impact her. "Mom, we're in the middle of renovating the pool house. The twins need new laptops for school. Michael and I were counting on your contribution this month." Her voice had taken on an edge I rarely heard. "Can't you just take some pain medication and push through? Lots of people work with arthritis." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Claire, I physically cannot continue. My hands don't function properly anymore." I held them up, the knuckles swollen and fingers slightly bent. "I dropped sterilized equipment today. I could have compromised a patient's safety." Claire leaned back in her chair, frustration evident. "What about disability? Have you applied for that?" "Yes, but it will cover only a fraction of my salary, and the approval process takes months." She tapped her gold pen against the desk. "So what's your plan then? Just stop working?" "I thought perhaps I could move in here temporarily," I suggested, hesitantly. "The guest house is sitting empty, and I could help with the twins after school. It would save me rent and—" "Move in here?" Claire interrupted, her voice rising. "Mom, we've talked about this. Michael's parents visit regularly. We need that space. Besides, the twins are at an age where they need privacy, structure. Having Grandma living on the property would be—" She searched for a word, "disruptive." The way she said Grandma made it sound like an inconvenience, a burden. I felt a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with my physical condition. "I see," I said quietly. "I thought since I helped with the down payment on this house, perhaps—" "That was a gift, Mom," Claire said sharply. "You can't hold that over our heads forever. We've worked hard for everything we have." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course. I'm sorry to have brought it up." Claire checked her watch again and stood. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Look, I have to prepare for this call. Why don't you think about applying for that senior living community near your place? The one with the sliding scale payments? I heard they have activities and medical staff on site. It might be perfect for someone in your situation." Someone in my situation. As if my age and health had reduced me to a category, a problem to be managed. I rose slowly from the chair, wincing at the pain in my knees. "I've always been there, for you, Claire," I said softly. "Through everything." She was already looking back at her computer screen. "And I appreciate that, Mom. But we all have to be realistic about the future. Michael and I can't be expected to support 3 children. 3 children. She had classified me alongside her 10-year-olds. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. Not really. "I'll let myself out." As I turned to leave, Claire added, "About the money this month. Can you still manage it? We've already factored it into our budget." That was the moment something inside me finally snapped, a lifetime of selfless giving crumbling under the weight of such callous entitlement. I stood straighter, ignoring the pain. No, Claire, I can't manage it anymore. Not this month, not ever again. Her head jerked up, surprise and irritation crossing her face. Mom? Be reasonable. It's just temporary. We're not asking you to continue indefinitely, just until we finish the renovations. After everything we've done for you— Everything you've done for me? I repeated, my voice unnaturally calm. Please, tell me what exactly have you done for me? Claire's face flushed. We include you in holidays. We let you be part of the twins' lives. Let me? I cut her off. Let me be part of my own grandchildren's lives? That's not generosity, Claire. That's basic human decency. Mom, you're overreacting, Claire said dismissively. I'm just saying we all have financial responsibilities. You can't just become a burden on us because you've decided not to work anymore. There it was, the word that changed everything. Burden. I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me. I see. Well, I wouldn't want to burden you. I'll be going now. Mom, wait, Claire called as I reached the door. I didn't mean it like that. Let's talk about this when you're thinking more clearly. I turned back one last time. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Claire, for the first time in many years. I walked out of her immaculate house, past the manicured lawn where I'd helped plant flower beds last spring, and into my 10-year-old Honda. As I sat in the driver's seat, tears finally came. Not sad tears, but tears of clarity, of revelation. I had given and given until I had nearly nothing left, all for a daughter who saw me as nothing more than a line item in her budget. That night, I did something I hadn't done in almost 3 decades. I logged into my investment account. The MediNova shares had indeed grown to $4. $2 million. After taxes, it would still be more than enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But there was something else I needed to check. I dug through my filing cabinet until I found the folder labeled Property Documents. Inside were copies of deeds, mortgages, and lending agreements, the paper trail of my financial sacrifices for Claire. When Claire and Michael had purchased their home in Oak Ridge Estates 5 years ago, they'd been short on the down payment. The housing market was hot, and they were afraid of losing their dream home. I'd contributed $175,000, nearly every penny I had saved, with the understanding that I would be included on the deed as co-owner. Claire had assured me it was merely a formality, that the house was still theirs, but legally my name was there, alongside theirs. Similarly, when Claire had opened her design studio in the fashionable part of downtown, I had provided the security deposit and first year's rent, $62,000 in total. The commercial lease listed both our names, and most recently, when Claire and Michael had purchased a vacation property in Aspen, a necessary investment for networking with wealthy clients, Claire had explained, I'd liquidated my remaining assets to help them meet the 30% down payment required for a second home. My name was on that deed as well. All these years, I had seen these investments as gifts, as loving contributions to my daughter's happiness and success. I never imagined I would need to think of them as leverage. But as I spread the documents across my kitchen table, I realized I held more power than Claire knew. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls, one to my bank, one to my investment broker, and one to James, Robert's old colleague who had recommended the MediNova investment all those years ago. James had become a financial advisor, and his advice now was clear. Patty, it's time to think about yourself for a change. I didn't call Claire, not that day nor the next. On the 3rd day, my phone rang constantly. Claire, Michael, even Claire's assistant Margot. I let the calls go to voicemail. Claire's messages evolved from irritated, "Mom, why aren't you picking up?" to concerned, "Are you okay?" This isn't like you, to panicked. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk ASAP. It was the last message that made me finally return her call. Mom, there's been some kind of mistake. The bank called Michael about our mortgage. Something. About a co-owner requesting information? Please call me back immediately. Hello, Claire, I said when she answered on the first ring. Mom, thank God. Are you okay? We've been so worried. I'm fine, I replied calmly. I've been making some long overdue arrangements for my future. What's going on with the bank? They called about our mortgage, something about ownership verification. Did you contact them? Yes, I did, I confirmed. I've been reviewing all my investments recently. There was a pause. Your investments? Mom, what are you talking about? The house in Oak Ridge Estates, the design studio downtown, the vacation property in Aspen. My name is on all of those deeds, Claire. Legally, I own a significant portion of your life. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. Those were gifts, Claire finally said, her voice unsteady. You can't seriously be thinking of claiming ownership now. Not claiming, Claire. I already have ownership. I always have. I'm simply acknowledging it now. Mom, this isn't funny. What exactly are you planning to do? I took a deep breath. I've scheduled meetings with the mortgage holders for all 3 properties. I'll be discussing refinancing options, possibly removing certain names from the deeds. Removing? Claire spluttered. You can't do that. That's our home, our business. Property, our vacation house. Actually, it's our home, our business property, our vacation house, I corrected gently. And since I'm apparently becoming a burden, I thought it best to liquidate some assets to ensure I won't need to rely on anyone's charity. This is insane, Claire hissed. You're threatening to sell our properties out from under us because I suggested you look into senior living, because I was honest about our financial situation. Michael will have his lawyers. Michael's lawyers are welcome to review the documentation, I interrupted. Everything was properly executed. I'm not threatening anything, Claire. I'm simply making prudent financial decisions for my future, just as you suggested I should. Claire's voice turned tearful. Mom, please. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just surprised by your situation. Give us a chance to figure this out together. I'm happy to discuss it, I replied. How about dinner tomorrow night? Your house, 7 p.m. I think Michael should be present as well. Yes, of course, Claire said quickly. We'll be here. Mom, I'm so sorry if my words came across poorly. You know how much we love you. After we hung up, I sat quietly in my small living room, watching the afternoon light filter through the blinds. I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a deep sadness that it had come to this. But beneath that sadness was something new. Resolve. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first, and it was long overdue. The next evening, I arrived at Claire and Michael's home precisely at 7 p.m. I wore my best outfit, a navy blue pantsuit I'd purchased for Claire's business launch party years ago, and brought with me a leather portfolio containing all the relevant documents. Michael opened the door, his usual confident demeanor noticeably subdued. Patty, good to see you, he said, leaning in for an awkward hug. Claire's just finishing up in the kitchen. The house smelled of expensive scented candles and my daughter's signature dish, coq au vin, which she only prepared for special occasions or when she wanted something. The dining room table was elegantly set with the fine china they kept for important guests. Claire emerged from the kitchen, looking impeccable as always, but with a tightness around her eyes that betrayed her stress. Mom, I'm so glad you're here, she said, embracing me with unusual warmth. We've been so worried about you. No need to worry, I assured her as I took a seat at the table. I'm doing quite well. The twins were conspicuously absent. Where are Emma and Ethan? I asked. Sleepover at a friend's, Michael explained, smoothly. We thought it would be good for us adults to have some uninterrupted time together. So they wanted privacy for whatever was about to unfold. Sensible. Claire served the meal with practiced grace, keeping the conversation carefully neutral. The twins' school achievements, an upcoming charity gala, the unseasonably warm weather. It wasn't until the dessert plates were cleared that Michael finally addressed the elephant in the room. Patty, he began, his lawyer voice in full effect. Claire shared with me your concerns about your financial future. First, let me say that we absolutely want to support you however we can. Family comes first. I nodded, but remained silent. That said, he continued, I think there may be some confusion about the nature of the financial arrangements regarding our properties. While we deeply appreciate your contributions, they were understood to be gifts, not investments with an expectation of ongoing ownership. I have copies of all the deeds right here, I said, opening my portfolio and placing the documents on the table. My name appears alongside yours on each one. These weren't loans to be repaid or gifts with no strings attached. They were investments in properties that I partially own. Michael cleared his throat. Yes, technically that's correct. But the intention, I interrupted gently, was that I would always have a place in your lives and your home. That I would be treated with respect, not as a burden to be managed. Claire flinched at the word. Mom, about what I said the other day. I was stressed and spoke without thinking. You know I don't see you as a burden. Don't you? I asked, looking directly at her. When I needed help for the first time in 35 years, your immediate response wasn't concern for my health or well-being. It was irritation at the inconvenience to your budget and suggestion that I be housed in a facility where I wouldn't disrupt your life. Claire's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. We've included you in everything. We named Emma after you, Patricia Emma, remember? We've never shut you out. Including me has always been on your terms, I replied. Sunday dinners when it's convenient, holiday gatherings where I help cook and clean, babysitting when your regular sitter cancels. But the moment I needed real support, I became expendable. Michael leaned forward, his expression serious. Patty, what exactly are you asking for? If this is about money, we can work something out. A monthly stipend, perhaps? I shook my head. This isn't about money, Michael. It's about recognition of my worth beyond what I can contribute financially or practically. It's about acknowledging that after a lifetime of putting Claire first, I deserve better than to be discarded when I'm no longer useful. No one is discarding you, Claire protested. We just need to find a practical solution that works for everyone. I agree, I said, surprising them both. That's why I've made a decision. I pulled out another document from my portfolio and placed it on the table. It was a printout of my investment account statement, with the Metanova shares highlighted. Michael picked it up, his eyes widening as he read. He handed it wordlessly to Claire, whose mouth literally dropped open. $4 million? She whispered. You have $4 million? 4.2, I corrected. Give or take, depending on the market. But how? When? Claire stammered. You've been working night shifts, living in that tiny townhouse, driving that old Honda. I made an investment with part of your father's life insurance. Money, I explained. It grew over time. I never touched it because I was saving it for you, for your inheritance. Claire looked stricken. All this time, you've been struggling, working so hard, and you had this? I wasn't struggling because I had to, I said quietly. I was struggling because I chose to give everything to you instead of using it for myself. I wanted you to have every advantage, every opportunity. I wanted your life to be easier than mine had been. Tears spilled down Claire's cheeks. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed how you treated me? I asked. Should it? Claire had no answer. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady. I'm keeping my name on all 3 properties, but I won't be selling them or removing your names. They'll remain family assets. However, I will be making some changes in my life. I pulled out one final document, a glossy brochure for a luxury condominium complex overlooking the city park. I've purchased a new home. I'll be moving next month. I've also resigned permanently from the hospital and will be focusing on my health and, for the first time in my life, my own happiness. Michael nodded slowly. That sounds entirely reasonable. Claire wiped her eyes. Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry we made you feel undervalued. I know you are, I said, reaching out to take her hand. And I accept your apology. But Claire, this isn't just about an apology. It's about a fundamental shift in our relationship. From now on, I won't be your safety net, your backup childcare, or your financial reserve. I'll be your mother, whom you treat with respect regardless of what I can do for you. Of course, Claire whispered. As for my investment, I continued, half of it will remain my living expenses. The other half will go into a trust for the twins' education. Not to you, not to Michael, but directly to Emma and Ethan when they reach college age. Michael nodded. That's very generous, Patty. It's not about generosity, I said. It's about legacy. I want my grandchildren to understand the value of education and the importance of kindness. I want them to know that their grandmother was more than just a convenient babysitter or an ATM. We talked for another hour, delving into decades of unspoken feelings and expectations. There were more tears, some defensive moments, but ultimately, a new understanding. As I prepared to leave, Claire embraced me tightly. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I lost sight of what matters. I love you too, I replied. And I have faith that we can build something better moving forward. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The next morning, I called a real estate agent and scheduled viewings of several properties I'd been considering. I researched art classes at the community center and looked into volunteer opportunities at the local literacy program. I even created a profile on a travel website for seniors, something I'd always wanted to do but never thought I could afford. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. It wasn't selfish, it was necessary. It wasn't a punishment. To Claire, it was a gift to myself. 3 months later, I hosted Claire, Michael, and the twins for dinner in my new condominium. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the park below, and the spacious open-plan living area was perfect for entertaining. I'd furnished it exactly as I wanted, with comfortable seating, colorful artwork, and not a single thing chosen for practicality over pleasure. The twins marveled at the building's rooftop garden and indoor pool. Michael complimented my taste in wine, and Claire looked at me differently. There was a new respect in her eyes, perhaps even a touch of admiration. As we sat down to eat, Emma asked innocently, "Grandma, are you rich now?" I smiled at her. "I've always been rich. Sweetheart, I just didn't realize it until recently." "What do you mean?" she pressed with a child's direct curiosity. I thought for a moment before answering. True wealth isn't just about money. It's about knowing your own worth and honoring it. It took me a long time to learn that lesson. Claire caught my eye across the table and nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth in my words. There was still healing to be done, boundaries to be reinforced, old patterns to be broken, but we had made a start. Later, as they were leaving, Claire hung back after the others had gone ahead to the elevator. "Mom," she said hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how I treated you, about the example I was setting for the twins." She took a deep breath. "I want you to know that I'm working on being better, on seeing people, seeing For who they are, not what they can give me. I hugged her close. That's all I ever wanted, I told her. For both of us. After they left, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the city lights twinkle in. The darkness. At 63, my life wasn't ending. It was finally beginning. My name might be on Claire's property deeds, but more importantly, I had finally claimed ownership of my own life. And that was worth more than all the houses in the world. The next few weeks brought changes I never could have anticipated. My new condominium quickly became a sanctuary, a place where every decision, from the color of the walls to the brand of coffee in my cupboard, reflected my preferences alone. No compromises, no calculations about what would please someone else. Just pure, unbridled self-expression. I hired an interior decorator, not Claire, though she had offered her services free of charge. I want to find my own style, I told her gently when she seemed hurt by my refusal. I've spent decades living in spaces designed for other people's comfort. This time, I need to discover what truly makes me happy. The decorator I chose, Vivian, was a vibrant woman in her 70s who specialized in helping seniors create spaces that were both beautiful and functional. Aging doesn't mean sacrificing aesthetics, she declared during our first meeting. It means being smarter about how we incorporate beauty into our lives. Under Vivian's guidance, my new home took shape. The kitchen featured lower cabinets with pull-out drawers that wouldn't strain my arthritic hands. The bathroom included elegant grab bars that looked like sophisticated towel rails. The living room furniture prioritized support and comfort without resembling medical equipment. Everything was designed to accommodate my physical limitations while celebrating my newfound independence. Claire visited regularly during this transformation, bringing coffee and attempting casual conversation that couldn't quite mask her lingering discomfort. I knew she was trying to reconcile the mother she'd always known, selfless, accommodating, ever available, with this new woman who prioritized her own needs and expressed her own opinions without hesitation. "The place looks amazing, Mom," she commented one afternoon, running her hand along the new granite countertop. "Very different from your old townhouse." "Yes," I agreed, not missing the note of uncertainty in her voice. "It's exactly what I wanted." Claire fiddled with her coffee cup. "Michael and I were talking, and we wondered if you might want to join us for the winter holidays in Aspen this year. The twins would love having you there." I studied my daughter's face. The perfect makeup, the carefully controlled expression that didn't quite hide her anxiety. In the past, such an invitation would have sent me into a flurry of grateful acceptance and immediate planning. What foods would I prepare? What gifts would I bring? How could I make myself useful enough to justify my presence? Now, I took a moment to consider what I actually wanted. "That's kind of you to offer, Claire, but I've already made other plans," I said calmly. Her eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Really? What plans?" "I've booked a Mediterranean cruise," I explained. 15 days exploring Greece, Turkey, and the Italian coast. I leave December 18th and return January 3rd. Claire stared at me as if I'd announced plans to fly to the moon. "A cruise? By yourself? Over Christmas and New Year's?" "Yes to all three questions," I replied with a smile. "It's something I've always wanted to do." "But it's the holidays," Claire protested, as though this fact alone should make my decision incomprehensible. "We always spend the holidays together. It's tradition." "Traditions can evolve," I said gently. "Besides, I think we could all use some new perspectives this year." Claire's face fell, and for a moment, I glimpsed the little girl who'd cried when I couldn't attend her third-grade play because I was working a double shift. It tugged at my heart, that reflexive maternal instinct to soothe her disappointment, to rearrange my life to accommodate her expectations. But then I remembered that little girl had grown into a woman who'd called me a burden when I needed her most. Perhaps we could celebrate early, I suggested as a compromise. I could host a pre-holiday dinner here before I leave. Claire nodded, slowly, clearly still processing this unprecedented assertion of independence. The twins will be disappointed, she said, a final attempt at leveraging my grandmotherly guilt. I'll bring them wonderful gifts from Europe, I replied cheerfully, and we'll FaceTime on Christmas morning. After Claire left, I sat on my new balcony, watching the sun set over the city park. A complex mix of emotions washed over me. Pride in my newfound assertiveness, guilt at disrupting family expectations, and a spark of excitement about my upcoming adventure. The cruise had been an impulsive booking, made during a late-night browsing session when the reality of my financial freedom had truly sunk in. The old Patty would never have dreamed of spending thousands of dollars on a solo vacation. The new Patty couldn't wait to see the Parthenon. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Claire mentioned your cruise plans. Sounds amazing. Let me know if you need help preparing, travel insurance, etc. I have good contacts in that industry. I smiled at his message. Of my two in-laws, Michael had adjusted more readily to the shift in our family dynamic. Perhaps because he came from wealth himself, he seemed to respect my financial autonomy in a way Claire struggled to comprehend. Or perhaps he was simply more pragmatic, recognizing that maintaining a positive relationship with his children's grandmother, who now controlled a substantial trust for their education, was in everyone's best interest. Whatever his motivation, I appreciated his support. Thanks, Michael. Would appreciate any recommendations for good travel insurance for seniors. My next visitor arrived 2 days later, buzzing my intercom on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. It was Susan Wells, my former neighbor from the townhouse complex and one of my oldest friends. We'd grown close during the difficult years following Robert's death, with Susan providing emotional support while I struggled to raise Claire alone. This place is gorgeous, Susan exclaimed, turning in a full circle to take in my new living room. And that view. Patty, you've been holding out on me. I laughed and embraced her. Not holding out, just making changes very quickly. Susan had been away visiting her son in Arizona for the past month, which meant she'd missed the dramatic upheaval in my life. I'd texted her about moving, but had saved the full story for an in-person conversation. Over tea and the scones I'd baked that morning, some habits die hard, I recounted everything. Claire's rejection, the revelation about my investments, the confrontation over the property deeds, and my decision to finally prioritize my own needs. Susan listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to outrage to pride as my story unfolded. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I always knew you had it in you, she said firmly. Remember when that contractor tried to overcharge you for fixing your roof? You were so fierce then, standing your ground. But, with Claire, you've always had a blind spot. I sighed. Mothers often do, I suppose. We want so badly for our children to be happy that we forget to teach them how to make others happy, too. Well, better late than never, Susan declared, raising her teacup in a toast. To Patty, too. 0, wealthier, wiser, and not taking any more crap from anybody. We laughed together, and I felt a wave of gratitude for this steadfast friendship that had weathered so many seasons of my life. Susan had seen me at my lowest points and had never judged or abandoned me. If only all relationships could be so unconditional. So, what's next on your agenda of fabulousness? Susan asked, helping herself to another scone. After the cruise, I mean. I hesitated, then decided to share the idea that had been percolating in my mind. I'm thinking of establishing a scholarship fund at the nursing school where I trained. For single parents who want to enter healthcare but can't afford the tuition. Susan's eyes widened. Patty, that's perfect. Giving others the chance you barely had yourself. Exactly, I nodded. I struggled so much in those early years after Robert died, working full-time while studying, paying for childcare, trying to be both mother and father to Claire. If I'd had even a little financial support, everything would have been easier. Have you told Claire about this plan? I shook my head. Not yet. I'm still working out the details with the University Foundation. Once it's established, I'll let her know. Susan studied me thoughtfully. You know what I admire most about how you're handling all this? You're not being vindictive. You could have sold those properties out from under Claire and Michael, left them scrambling. You could have cut them off completely. But instead, you're establishing boundaries while still maintaining the relationship. Her observation made me pause. Vindictiveness had never crossed my mind, not really. Even in my deepest hurt, I'd never wanted to punish Claire, only to be recognized and respected for who I was, not just what I could provide. She's still my daughter, I said simply. That hasn't changed, even if our dynamic has. After Susan left, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The painful confrontation with Claire had been a catalyst, but the transformation had been building for years, perhaps even decades. Every time I'd swallowed my needs for the sake of peace, every time I'd worked an extra shift instead of resting my aching body, every time I'd pretended that Claire's dismissive attitude didn't wound me deeply, all of it had been leading to this inevitable reckoning. The following weekend, I hosted the pre-holiday dinner I'd promised Claire. I spent days preparing, not from obligation as in years past, but from genuine pleasure. I set my new dining table with china I'd purchased specifically for the occasion, not the formal traditional pattern Claire might have chosen, but colorful, contemporary pieces that made me smile. I cooked favorite dishes but also tried new recipes I'd been curious about. I played music I enjoyed, not the classical selections Claire preferred for proper dinner parties. The twins arrived first, bursting through the door with the boundless energy of 10-year-olds. Emma immediately gravitated to the bay window with its window seat overlooking the park. "Grandma, this is the perfect reading nook," she declared. "Can I bring my books when I visit?" "Absolutely," I assured her, touched by her assumption that she would be a regular visitor. "We'll make this your special spot." Ethan, meanwhile, was exploring the kitchen with keen interest. Unlike his sister's bookish nature, Ethan had recently developed a passion for cooking. "You have a proper stand mixer," he exclaimed. "Mom never lets me use hers. She says it's too expensive to risk." "You can use mine whenever you visit," I told him. "In fact, would you like to help me finish the dessert?" His face lit up, and for the next half hour, we worked side by side, preparing a chocolate mousse with raspberry coulis. I showed him how to fold the ingredients gently to maintain the airiness, and he demonstrated a natural talent for plating that surpassed my own skills. "Mom says you used to be poor," Ethan remarked suddenly as we worked. "But now you're rich. How did that happen?" Children's directness could be startling sometimes. "I wasn't exactly poor," I explained carefully. "I just chose to spend my money on different things. I wanted your mom to have opportunities, so I put her needs first. Now I'm putting my needs first for a change." Ethan nodded sagely, like when Mom says I have to share my dessert with Emma even though I'm still hungry. I smiled. Something like that. "I think it's good you're not sharing anymore," he declared confidently. "Emma always gets more than me anyway." The wisdom of children, filtered through their limited experiences but often striking at essential truths. Claire and Michael arrived shortly after, bringing wine and flowers. Claire seemed tense, her smile a bit too bright, her movements slightly too controlled. Michael, by contrast, appeared genuinely relaxed and curious about my new home. "The building has excellent security," he noted approvingly after I gave them a tour. "And the amenities are impressive. Do you use the gym on the lower level?" "I've started water aerobics classes in the pool," I told him. "Twice weekly. It's gentle on my joints but still good exercise. Claire raised an eyebrow. Water aerobics? You? Yes, me, I replied evenly. I'm quite enjoying it. We settled at the dining table, and I served the first course, a roasted butternut squash, soup with sage croutons. As we ate, Claire made a visible effort to engage in pleasant conversation, asking about my decorating choices and commenting on the view. But I could sense her discomfort, her struggle to relate to this new version of her mother who had opinions and preferences that didn't revolve around her needs. So, Mom, she said as I served the main course, I've been thinking about your cruise. Are you sure you want to travel alone? I know some wonderful group tours specifically for seniors. Much safer than going solo. I've actually joined a small travel group, I informed her. 12 passengers who signed up individually but will explore ports together. The cruise line arranged it. 3 of us are solo travelers, the rest are couples. Oh, Claire looked surprised. That's proactive of you. I may be newly independent, Claire, but I'm not reckless, I said with a smile to soften the words. I've researched thoroughly. I've arranged travel insurance, thanks to Michael's recommendation. I've even learned a few basic phrases in Greek and Italian. Michael raised his glass. To new adventures, Patty. I think it's fantastic. Claire shot him a look but joined the toast half-heartedly. To new adventures. As the meal progressed, I noticed the twins watching our interaction with unusual attentiveness. Children often perceive shifts in family dynamics before they can articulate them. Emma, especially, seemed to be studying her mother's reactions, to me with a thoughtfulness beyond her years. After dessert, which earned Ethan effusive praise for his artistic plating, Claire excused herself to use the bathroom. In her absence, Emma sidled up to my chair. "Grandma," she whispered, "are you mad at Mom?" I chose my words carefully. "Not mad, sweetheart. We're just adjusting to a new way of being family together. Change can be challenging sometimes." Emma nodded solemnly. "Mom was crying in her office yesterday. She said you don't need her anymore." My heart twisted. Despite everything, the thought of Claire in pain still affected me deeply. I'll always need your mom, Emma, just in different ways than before. When Claire returned, I suggested we move to the living room for coffee. As the twins became absorbed in a board game Michael had brought along, I found a moment to speak privately with Claire in the kitchen as we prepared the coffee tray. "Emma mentioned you were upset yesterday," I said quietly. "She thinks I don't need you anymore." Claire stiffened, focusing intently on arranging cookies on a plate. "Children exaggerate. I was just tired." "Claire," I said gently, "this transition has been difficult for both of us. We're redefining a relationship that's existed for 35 years. It's okay to find that challenging." She glanced up, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Is it challenging for you? Because you seem to be thriving. In your new independent life, weekly swimming classes, Mediterranean cruises, making new friends. You don't seem to miss anything about your old life, about us." The hurt in her voice was unmistakable, and I finally understood. Claire wasn't just struggling with the loss of practical support or financial contribution. She was grappling with a deeper fear that in discovering my independence, I had discovered I didn't need her at all. "Come here," I said, setting down the coffee pot and opening my arms. After a moment's hesitation, Claire stepped into my embrace. I held her close, feeling the tension in her shoulders, remembering how she'd fit perfectly in my arms as a child, how holding her had always felt like holding my entire world. "Listen to me," I said softly. "I will always need you. You're my daughter, my only child, my first and deepest love. That hasn't changed and will never change." She pulled back slightly, wiping at her eyes. "Then why does everything feel so different? Why does it feel like you're pulling away from us?" "Because I'm learning to love you without losing myself," I explained. For too many years, I defined my worth by what I could give you. I never developed an identity separate from being your mother. That wasn't healthy for either of us. Claire was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. I guess I never thought about it that way. I know, I said without accusation. You had no reason to. I never gave you reason to. So what happens now? She asked, vulnerability evident in her voice. Now we build something new together, I told her. Something balanced and mutually respectful. I'll still be here for you and the twins, just not at the expense of my own well-being. And perhaps you'll discover aspects of me you never knew existed, interests and opinions and dreams that have nothing to do with being a mother or grandmother. Claire managed a watery smile. Like your sudden interest in water aerobics? I laughed. Exactly. Who knew I'd enjoy exercising in a swimming pool at my age? And the cruise? She asked tentatively. You're really okay going alone? I'm a little nervous, I admitted, but also excited. It's like I've been reading the same book for decades, and suddenly I've discovered there are chapters I never knew existed. Claire nodded slowly. I think I understand. Or at least, I'm trying to. That's all I ask, I said, squeezing her hand. Now, let's get this coffee served before Michael thinks we've abandoned him with the twins. The evening ended on a warmer note than it had begun. As they prepared to leave, Claire embraced me tightly and whispered, I'm sorry I called you a burden. You've never been that. Not once in my entire life. I held her close. I know, sweetheart. We're learning together. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room reflecting on the evening. There had been moments of tension, yes, but also moments of genuine connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were healthy family dynamics. My phone buzzed with a text message from Claire. Ethan hasn't stopped talking about cooking with you. Would it be okay if he spent some time with you next weekend learning more? I think he may have found his passion. I smiled and typed back, I'd love that. Tell him to think about what he wants to make. We'll shop for ingredients together. This was how we would rebuild, not with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but with small moments of genuine connection. Cooking lessons with Ethan, creating a reading nook for Emma, honest conversations with Claire about our changing relationship. The next morning, I had an appointment with James, Robert's former colleague and now my financial advisor. We met at his office downtown, a sleek space with panoramic views of the city skyline. Patty, you're looking well, he greeted me warmly. Retirement clearly agrees with you. I smiled as I took a seat across from his desk. I'm not sure if it's retirement or financial security that agrees with me, but yes, I'm doing well. Both, I suspect, he replied, opening my file on his computer. Now, I've reviewed the proposal for the Nursing Scholarship Fund. The University Foundation is very enthusiastic about your idea. They've suggested naming it the Patricia Winters Scholarship for Healthcare Excellence. That seems a bit grandiose, I said, feeling unexpectedly self-conscious. Couldn't we simply call it the New Beginnings Scholarship or something similar? James looked at me thoughtfully. You know, Patty, it's okay to let your name be associated with your generosity. You've spent a lifetime being quietly selfless. Perhaps it's time to let your light shine a bit more visibly. His words resonated with something deep inside me, a lifelong habit of deflecting recognition, of minimizing my own contributions, of existing in the background of others' lives. Even now, with my newfound assertiveness in personal relationships, I still struggled to accept acknowledgement for my good deeds. I'll think about it, I promised. For now, let's focus on the logistics. I want to ensure the scholarship prioritizes single parents, particularly those with limited family support. We spent the next hour discussing details, funding amounts, selection criteria, application processes. I wanted the scholarship to cover not just tuition, but also practical expenses like childcare during classes and textbooks. I knew from experience how these extra costs could be insurmountable barriers for struggling parents. As our meeting concluded, James leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression. You know, when I recommended that Medinova investment all those years ago, I never imagined it would lead to this. Robert would be incredibly proud of how you've managed everything. The mention of my late husband brought a bittersweet pang. I've been thinking about him lately, I admitted, wondering what he would make of all these changes. He adored you, Patty, James said gently, but he also worried about you. He told me once that your greatest strength, your selflessness, could also be your greatest vulnerability if people took advantage of it. I'd never heard this perspective from Robert before. He said that? James nodded. Right before he died, when we were discussing the life insurance arrangements. He made me promise to look out for you, to make sure you didn't give everything away to others without keeping something for yourself. A lump formed in my throat. Even in his final days, Robert had been thinking of my well-being, foreseeing challenges I couldn't yet imagine. I wish he could see me now, I said softly. He can, James replied with a gentle smile. And I know he's cheering you on. As I left James's office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The scholarship fund wasn't just about giving back or creating a legacy. It was about completing a circle, taking the painful lessons from my own struggles and transforming them into opportunities for others facing similar challenges. I decided to walk home rather than taking a taxi, enjoying the crisp, autumn air and the vibrant colors of the trees lining the city streets. As I strolled, I noticed details I might have missed in earlier years when I was always rushing from one obligation to another. The intricate architecture of historic buildings, the cheerful resilience of late-blooming flowers, the diverse faces of my fellow pedestrians, each carrying their own complex stories. My phone rang, interrupting my reverie. It was Dr. Martinez, my rheumatologist. Mrs. Winters, she said when I answered. I've reviewed your latest test results. The new medication is helping, but not as much as I'd hoped. I'd like to discuss adjusting your treatment plan. Can you come in this week? I checked my mental calendar. Thursday morning works for me. Perfect. And how's the pain management going? Any issues with the exercises I recommended? Some days are better than others, I admitted. The water aerobics seems to help significantly. Excellent. Keep that up. I'll see you Thursday at 10 a.m. As I tucked my phone away, I reflected on this aspect of my new reality. Financial freedom hadn't magically cured my arthritis or reversed the effects of aging. My body still had limitations, still required careful management, and occasionally failed me despite my best efforts. But now I could address these challenges directly, without the added pressure of maintaining a physically demanding job or hiding my pain to avoid burdening others. When I reached my condominium building, the doorman greeted me with a friendly smile and handed me a package that had arrived during my absence. Looks like another cruise delivery, Mrs. Winters, he commented. You must be getting excited for your trip. Very excited, George, I confirmed, accepting the package, though also a bit nervous. You'll have a wonderful time, he assured me. My mother took her first cruise at 70 and hasn't stopped traveling since. Says it keeps her young. In my apartment, I opened the package to find the special compression stockings I'd ordered for the flight to Rome, where I would board the cruise ship. Another concession to my physical realities, taking precautions against blood clots during the long journey. I added them to the growing collection of travel items arranged neatly on my guest room bed: travel-sized medications, comfortable walking shoes, a new digital camera, a journal for recording my experiences. My phone chimed, with a text message from an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Winters, this is Vivian's assistant. She asked me to let you know your custom nightstands will be delivered next Tuesday between 2-4 p.m. Please confirm if this works for you. I replied affirmatively, pleased that the final pieces of my new home were falling into place. The nightstands had been specially designed to accommodate my needs, slightly higher than standard to minimize bending, with built-in reading lights and accessible charging ports for my devices. Just as I was settling down with a cup of tea, my doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I was surprised to see Michael standing in the hallway, alone and carrying a large portfolio case. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," he said when I opened the door. "I was in the building for a meeting with another client and thought I'd take a chance on catching you at home." "Of course," I said, stepping back to let him enter. "Is everything all right? Where's Claire?" "At the studio with a client," he explained, setting down his portfolio on my coffee table. "This is actually a bit of a surprise for her, which is why I came alone." Intrigued, I gestured for him to sit. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea?" "No, thank you. This won't take long." He opened the portfolio and removed several official-looking documents. "After our dinner the other night, I did some thinking about our family situation, specifically about the properties and how they're currently titled." My guard went up immediately. "Michael," he held up a hand. "Please hear me out. I'm not here to challenge anything or make demands. Quite the opposite, actually." Cautiously, I nodded for him to continue. "These are new deeds for all 3 properties," he explained, spreading the documents on the table. "They've been modified to give you full, irrevocable life estate rights. This means that while Claire and I remain co-owners with you, you have guaranteed rights to use and benefit from these properties for your entire lifetime. No one can sell them without your consent. No one can force you out, and your rights cannot be diminished or revoked under any circumstances." I stared at the papers, momentarily speechless. "Why would you do this?" Michael met my gaze directly. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because you've spent your life ensuring Claire's security, and it's time we ensured yours. And frankly, because I want my children to witness what genuine respect and fairness look like in a family." I picked up one of the documents, scanning the legal language that indeed confirmed everything he'd described. "Does Claire know about this?" "Not yet," he admitted. "I wanted to present it to you first, to make sure you're comfortable with the arrangement before discussing it with her. If you approve, I thought we might tell her together." "And if she objects?" I asked, testing his resolve. Michael's expression remained steady. "She won't. Once I explain why this matters, she'll understand. Claire isn't heartless, Patty. She's just been accustomed to a certain dynamic for a very long time. We all have." I considered his words, recognizing the truth in them. Claire wasn't a villain in this story, any more than I was a flawless hero. We were just 2 imperfect people trying to navigate changing circumstances and evolving roles. "Thank you, Michael," I said finally, genuinely moved by his gesture. "This means more than you know." He smiled, visibly relieved by my acceptance. "I should be thanking you. Your revelation forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about how our family has been functioning. It's been enlightening, to say the least." After Michael left, I sat with the new documents spread before me, contemplating their significance. This wasn't just a legal adjustment, it was a powerful acknowledgement of my worth, my contributions, and my right to security. Coming from Michael, it carried special weight. As Claire's husband, he could have easily sided against me, viewing me solely as a potential threat to their assets. Instead, he'd chosen fairness and respect. The following day, we met with Claire at a quiet cafe near her studio. I arrived early, securing a corner table that offered privacy for what would likely be an emotional conversation. Michael joined me shortly after, looking polished in his business suit, but with an underlying nervousness I rarely saw in him. "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly. "It's not too late to reconsider." He shook his head firmly. "Absolutely sure. It's long overdue." Claire arrived 15 minutes late, flustered and apologetic. "Sorry, client meeting ran over. What's so urgent it couldn't wait until dinner?" Michael placed his hand over hers on the table. "We have something important to discuss with you. About the properties." Claire's eyes immediately darted to me, wariness replacing her hurried energy. "What about them?" I let Michael take the lead, watching Claire's expression shift from suspicion to confusion to disbelief as he explained the legal changes he'd initiated. Her fingers tightened around her water glass, knuckles whitening. "You did this without consulting me?" she asked when he finished, her voice carefully controlled. "Made major decisions about our assets without even a conversation?" Michael met her gaze steadily. "Yes, because it was the right thing to do, and I knew you might struggle to see that initially." Claire turned to me. "And you agreed to this? Behind my back?" "Michael approached me yesterday," I explained calmly. "I'm as surprised as you are by his initiative, but yes, I've accepted the arrangement." "I don't understand," Claire said, shaking her head. "Mom, you already said you weren't going to sell the properties or remove our names. You're already set financially with your investments. Why do you need this extra protection?" It was a valid question, one that revealed how differently we still viewed the situation. To Claire, my decision not to exercise my legal rights had been sufficient resolution. She didn't understand that formal recognition of those rights mattered deeply to me. "It's not about need, Claire," I said gently. "It's about acknowledgement. All these years, I've contributed significantly to your success and security. These changes simply recognize that contribution in a tangible, legally binding way." "So it's about getting credit," she said flatly. "Making sure everyone knows how much you've done for me," Michael interjected before I could respond. "Claire, that's not fair, and you know it. This is about doing right by your mother after years of taking her support for granted. It's about setting a clear precedent for our family going forward, that everyone's contributions matter. Everyone's security matters." Claire fell silent, staring into her water glass. I could almost see her thoughts racing, her instinctive defensiveness battling with deeper reflection. Finally, she looked up at me, her expression softened. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "My first reaction was selfish. Again." I reached across the table and took her hand. "This is a big adjustment for all of us. It's okay to have complicated feelings about it." She squeezed my hand, then turned to Michael. "You're right. It is the right thing to do. I just wish you'd talk to me first, given me the chance to come to that conclusion myself." "I know," he acknowledged. "But sometimes we need a push to see past our own perspectives. I needed that push myself." The tension eased as our conversation shifted to more practical matters. The legal implications of the new arrangement, what it meant for potential future sales or refinancing, how it would affect inheritance planning for the twins. Michael explained everything with the patient clarity of a good lawyer, ensuring we all understood the nuances of our new family agreement. As we prepared to leave, Claire embraced me tightly. "I really am sorry, Mom," she whispered, "for everything." "I know," I assured her. "We're finding our way forward together." The next few weeks passed in a flurry of preparation for my cruise. I shopped for appropriate clothing, researched the ports of call, renewed my passport, and underwent a thorough medical checkup to ensure I was fit for extended travel. Dr. Martinez adjusted my medication regimen, providing me with detailed instructions for managing my condition while abroad. "Remember to move regularly during the flight," she cautioned during my final appointment before departure. "And don't overexert yourself on shore excursions. Your body will tell you when it needs rest. Listen to it." I promise, I assured her, tucking the prescription into my purse. I've waited too long for this adventure to ruin it by pushing myself too hard. Claire remained conflicted about my travel plans, cycling between supportive enthusiasm and barely concealed anxiety. She insisted on driving me to the airport, arriving hours before my flight was scheduled to depart. "I've made you a list of emergency contacts," she said as we waited at the check-in counter. Michael's direct line, his assistant's number, the twin school, our neighbors, and Dr. Martinez's office. I've also included the American embassies in every country you'll be visiting. I accepted the meticulously prepared document with a smile. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's very thoughtful." "And you have your medication? In your carry-on, not your checked luggage?" "Yes, along with copies of all my prescriptions just in case." "And you'll text when you arrive in Rome? And again when you board the ship?" I placed my hand over hers, stilling her nervous energy. "Claire, I'll be fine. I raised you while working night shifts at a hospital. I think I can manage a luxury cruise with daily housekeeping and room service." She laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "You're right. I'm being ridiculous." "Not ridiculous," I corrected gently. "Just adjusting to seeing me in a new light." At the security checkpoint, Claire embraced me with unexpected fierceness. "I love you, Mom. Have an amazing time. You deserve every minute of it." "I love you too," I replied, touched by her sincerity. "Take care of yourself and those beautiful children. I'll bring you all something special." As I moved through security and toward my gate, I felt a curious lightness in my chest, not the absence of love for Claire and my family, but a liberation from the weight of obligation that had always accompanied that love. For the first time, I was pursuing my own joy without calculating its cost to others. The flight to Rome was long, but uneventful. I followed Dr. Martinez's advice, walking the aisle every hour and performing subtle stretching exercises in my seat. The compression stockings proved their worth, preventing the swelling I'd experienced on much shorter flights in the past. Rome greeted me with dazzling December sunshine and temperatures mild enough to explore comfortably with just a light jacket. I had arranged a 2-day stay before boarding the cruise ship, allowing myself time to adjust to the time difference and sample the city's famous cuisine and culture. My hotel, a renovated palazzo near the Spanish Steps, balanced old-world charm with modern amenities. After freshening up, I ventured out for a leisurely late lunch at a trattoria recommended by the concierge. Sitting at a small outdoor table, savoring perfectly prepared cacio e pepe and a glass of local wine, I found myself smiling at the sheer improbability of my situation. 6 months ago, I had been working night shifts and pinching pennies, defining my worth by my usefulness to others. Now, here I was, dining alone in Rome, answering to no one's schedule but my own. I sent Claire a brief text with a photo of my meal, keeping my promise to check in. Her response came quickly. "Looks amazing. Hotel okay? Any interesting people on your tour yet?" Her questions betrayed her continuing difficulty imagining me truly on my own. In her mind, I was still someone who needed infrastructure, who required the safety net of organized activities and the companionship of others. It didn't occur to her that I might relish my solitude, might enjoy making spontaneous decisions, without consulting anyone else's preferences. Rather than explaining this, I simply replied, "Hotel lovely, meeting tour group tomorrow, currently enjoying people watching on my own." The next day, I joined a walking tour of ancient Rome, marveling at the Colosseum and Forum with a small group of fellow travelers. Our guide, a vivacious Italian woman named Sophia, peppered her historical explanations with humorous anecdotes and insightful observations about modern Roman life. During a break near the Trevi Fountain, I struck up a conversation with another solo traveler, a silver-haired gentleman named Harold who had recently retired from teaching classics at a British university. "First time in Rome?" he inquired, offering me a piece of the chocolate he'd purchased from a nearby shop. First time in Europe, actually, I admitted. I'm embarking on a cruise tomorrow. Mediterranean ports. Ah, excellent choice for a maiden voyage abroad, he approved. Multiple destinations without the hassle of constantly changing hotels and arranging transportation. Are you traveling with family? No, just me, I replied, surprised at how easily the words came now. It's a gift to myself. Harold nodded appreciatively. The best kind of gift. I've been traveling solo since my wife passed 5 years ago. Found I quite enjoy my own company. I'm discovering the same, I said, experiencing a moment of kinship with this stranger who understood the particular pleasure of self-determined adventure. When the tour concluded, Harold asked if I'd like to join him for dinner at a restaurant he'd enjoyed on previous visits to Rome. Any lingering social awkwardness I might have felt about dining with a man I'd just met had diminished with age and perspective. He was simply a pleasant companion with whom I shared common interests, and I accepted with genuine enthusiasm. Over a magnificent meal of fresh seafood and roasted vegetables, we exchanged life stories. Harold had taught at Oxford for 40 years, raised 3 children who were now scattered across the globe, and written several books on Roman history that had enjoyed modest academic success. His wife Elizabeth had been a pediatrician with a passion for gardening and Italian cinema. She would have liked you, he remarked as we shared a tiramisu. Elizabeth appreciated people who embraced new experiences at any age. I told him about my nursing career, my late husband Robert, Claire and the twins, and my recent life changes. I found myself sharing details I hadn't discussed with anyone besides Susan. The decades of financial sacrifice, Claire's harsh rejection, my difficult but liberating decision to prioritize my own needs. Good for you, Harold said emphatically when I finished. Too many people never break free of patterns established in their youth, even when those patterns no longer serve them. Takes courage to chart a new course. We parted after dinner with a warm handshake and promises to stay in touch. Harold was continuing on to Naples the following day to visit an archaeological site, while I would be boarding my cruise ship. Perhaps our paths will cross again, he suggested. The travel world can be surprisingly small. I'd like that, I replied sincerely, realizing how refreshing it had been to connect with someone who knew me only as I was now, not as the self-sacrificing mother, the reliable employee, or the accommodating mother-in-law, but simply as Patty, a woman exploring Rome on her first trip abroad. The cruise exceeded my every expectation. My cabin, though compact, featured a private balcony where I could sit with my morning coffee and watch the Mediterranean coastline glide by. The ship itself offered numerous amenities: a library, multiple restaurants, a theater with nightly entertainment, a spa with treatments specifically designed for travelers with arthritis. As promised, I joined the arranged group of 12 passengers for shore excursions. We were a diverse bunch: 3 solo travelers including myself, 4 married couples, and 1 mother-daughter pair. Ages ranged from mid-30s to early 80s, with varied backgrounds and nationalities. What united us was a shared enthusiasm for exploration and a willingness to adapt to one another's paces and preferences. Diana, a retired professor from Vancouver, became my closest companion. At 72, she had been traveling solo for decades, ever since a divorce in her 40s had prompted her to reclaim her independence. Her practical advice and wry humor made her the perfect traveling partner. Never wait for the perfect moment or the perfect companion, she advised as we explored the ancient ruins of Ephesus. Life's too short and the world's too big. If you want to go, go. You can always find someone to take your photo. In Santorini, we hired a local guide to take us beyond the tourist-heavy areas to authentic villages where elderly Greek women still made traditional crafts by hand. In one such village, I purchased a delicate lace tablecloth, created by a woman whose gnarled fingers mirrored my own arthritic hands. Though we couldn't communicate through language, we shared a moment, of understanding as she demonstrated her technique, working through pain to create beauty. Each port offered new wonders: the vibrant markets of Istanbul, the medieval architecture of Rhodes, the stunning coastlines of the Italian Riviera. I filled my journal with observations and collected small treasures for the twins. A hand-painted ceramic plate from Greece for Emma, a carved wooden puzzle box from Turkey for Ethan. On Christmas morning, I woke early and stepped onto my balcony to watch the sunrise over Crete. The sky transformed from deep indigo to brilliant orange, painting the distant mountains in golden light. I thought about Christmases past, cooking elaborate meals in Claire's kitchen, wrapping last-minute gifts, ensuring everyone else's happiness while barely registering my own. Later, as promised, I FaceTimed with Claire and the family. They gathered around their tree in matching pajamas, exclaiming over the backdrop of ocean visible through my balcony door. "Merry Christmas, Grandma!" the twins shouted, waving excitedly. "Are you having fun? Did Santa find you on the boat?" I laughed, displaying the small gift basket the cruise line had delivered to all passengers that morning. "He certainly did, and I have special treasures for both of you when I return." Claire leaned closer to the screen, studying my face. "You look different, Mom," she remarked. "Relaxed, happy." "I am," I confirmed simply. "I'm having a wonderful time." After showing me their favorite gifts and describing their Christmas Eve activities, the twins wandered off to play with their new toys. Michael excused himself to check on dinner, leaving Claire and me in a moment of relative privacy. "I miss you," she admitted softly. "It's strange not having you here." "I miss you too," I replied honestly. "But this experience has been transformative. I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "I can tell. There's something different about you, beyond just looking rested. You seem more present, more fully yourself." Her observation touched me deeply. That's exactly how it feels. Like I'm finally occupying my entire self, not just the parts that serve others. "I'm happy for you, Mom," she said, and I could see she meant it, despite the complexity of emotions behind her words. Really, truly happy. After we disconnected, I spent a quiet moment reflecting on our conversation. Claire was trying, genuinely trying, to adjust to our new dynamic. Her acknowledgement of my happiness, without immediately centering her own needs or experiences, represented significant growth. We were both evolving, learning to love each other in healthier ways. New Year's Eve found our ship docked in Naples. The cruise line had arranged a spectacular celebration, a formal dinner followed by dancing under the stars on the top deck, culminating in a champagne toast at midnight, with the lights of the city twinkling in the distance. Diana insisted we prepare properly for the occasion, dragging me to the ship's boutique to purchase cocktail dresses neither of us would have worn in our everyday lives. "When else can we justify sequins and chiffon?" she argued as I hesitated, over a midnight blue gown with subtle beading. "We're literally sailing off the coast of Italy on New Year's Eve. If not now, when?" Persuaded by her enthusiasm, I bought the dress, along with silver heels low enough to accommodate my arthritic feet, but elegant enough to feel special. The ship's salon helped with my hair and makeup, creating a softer, more glamorous version of my usual practical style. When I caught my reflection in the cabin mirror before dinner, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the fancy dress or carefully arranged hair, but because of the confidence in my posture, the spark in my eyes, the ease in my smile. I looked like a woman who knew her own worth, who occupied space unapologetically, who expected to enjoy herself at a celebration rather than ensuring everyone else's enjoyment first. The evening was magical. Our little tour group claimed a large table with a perfect view of both the dining room's grand chandelier and the starlit ocean beyond the windows. Wine flowed freely, accompanying course after course of exquisite cuisine. After dinner, we moved to the top deck, where a live band played everything from classic jazz standards to contemporary pop hits. To my surprise, I found myself accepting dance invitations from Harold, who had unexpectedly reappeared on our cruise after his Naples explorations. Couldn't resist joining the journey, he explained with a grin. From Diana's nephew, who was traveling with his wife, even from the ship's charismatic Italian cruise director. As midnight approached, Diana pulled me aside, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "To new beginnings," she proposed, raising her glass. "And to the women we're becoming, even in our seasoned years." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. "And to friendships found in unexpected places." The sky exploded with fireworks as the clock struck 12, their brilliant colors reflecting off the dark water below. Cheers erupted across the deck, strangers embracing, couples kissing, everyone united in that universal moment of hope that accompanies a fresh calendar year. Harold appeared at my side, offering a gentlemanly kiss on the cheek. "Happy New Year, Patty. May it bring you even more adventures and discoveries." "And to you," I replied warmly. "Thank you for being part of this one." Later, back in my cabin, I composed a message to Claire and attached a photo Diana had taken of me against the backdrop of fireworks, champagne glass raised in toast. "Happy New Year from the Mediterranean. Entering 2025 with gratitude for the past and excitement for the future. Love you all." As the cruise neared its conclusion, I found myself neither eager to return home nor reluctant to leave the ship. Instead, I felt balanced between worlds, appreciative of the extraordinary experiences I'd enjoyed and equally ready to incorporate what I'd learned into my everyday life back home. On our final night aboard, our tour group gathered for a farewell dinner. We exchanged contact information, promised to share photos, and made tentative plans for future travels together. Diana and I had already discussed a potential river cruise through Central Europe the following autumn. Harold had invited me to attend a classical music festival in Vienna, where he served on the advisory board. Even the youngest couple in our group, Jason and Maria from Seattle, had urged me to visit them if I ever traveled to the Pacific Northwest. "You know what amazes me most about this trip?" I mused as we lingered over dessert. "Not the ancient ruins or the beautiful coastlines, though they were incredible. It's how quickly I've adapted to seeing myself differently, as someone worthy of experiences like this, as someone capable of creating connections wherever I go." "That's the true gift of travel," Diana agreed, raising her wine glass. "It reveals who you really are when stripped of familiar contexts and expectations." "To discoveries," Harold proposed, "both of new places and of ourselves." We all raised our glasses, united in appreciation of journeys both external and internal. When I finally returned home in early January, I arrived with far more than souvenirs and photographs. I carried a profound sense of recalibration, a clearer understanding of who I was beyond the roles I'd played for others, a deeper appreciation for my own resilience and adaptability, and a newfound confidence in my right to pursue joy on my own terms. Claire and the twins met me at the airport, bearing welcome home signs decorated with glitter and hand-drawn cruise ships. Emma clung to me immediately, chattering about everything I'd missed during the holidays. Ethan hung back slightly, suddenly, shy after our separation, then rushed forward to show me a new cookbook he'd received for Christmas. "You look amazing, Mom," Claire remarked as we walked to the parking garage. "The Mediterranean obviously agrees with you." "I think it's less about the location and more about the perspective," I replied, though the Mediterranean certainly didn't hurt. At my condominium, everything was exactly as I'd left it, yet somehow it all looked different to my travel-enriched eyes. My space felt both more precious, a sanctuary I'd created for myself, and less defining. I now knew I could be comfortable anywhere, could adapt to new environments, could trust myself to navigate unfamiliar territory. The twins explored eagerly, exclaiming over the souvenirs I'd brought them and begging for stories about each port of call. I obliged, describing Greek donkeys carrying tourists up steep cliffs, Turkish markets overflowing with spices and textiles, Italian gelato consumed while sitting on ancient marble steps. Claire watched this interchange with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, not jealousy exactly, but perhaps a dawning recognition of dimensions to me she'd never fully appreciated before. Her mother, the world traveler. Her mother, the storyteller. Her mother, the woman with experiences entirely separate from her role in Claire's life. After the twins were occupied with their gifts, Claire helped me unpack, asking thoughtful questions about my journey. As we worked, I shared not just tourist highlights but deeper reflections. How liberating it felt to make decisions based solely on my own preferences. How invigorating it was to form connections with people who knew nothing of my past. How empowering it was to navigate challenges without anyone's assistance. "I'm happy for you, Mom," Claire said sincerely as we folded the last of my travel clothes. "And I'm proud of you too. It takes courage to step so completely out of your comfort zone, especially at—" She trailed off, catching herself. "Especially at my age," I finished with a smile. "You can say it. I've earned every one of these years and gray hairs." She laughed, relaxing. "Yes, at your age. Though Diana sounds even more adventurous, and she's got nearly a decade on you." "Diana is extraordinary," I agreed. "She's been traveling solo since her 50s. I'm just getting started." Claire's expression grew serious. "So there will be more trips?" "Definitely," I confirmed. "I'm already considering options for later this year." She nodded slowly, processing this new reality. "I'm glad. You deserve to see the world, to have these experiences." Her words warmed me deeply. There was no hint of the entitlement or resentment that might have colored such a conversation just months ago. Claire was genuinely supporting my choices, recognizing my right to a life beyond my maternal role. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, squeezing her hand. "That means a lot." As Claire and the twins prepared to leave, Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, is it okay if I come over tomorrow after school? I want to show you my new book and hear more about the Greek islands." "Of course," I agreed readily. "We'll have a special afternoon together." Ethan perked up immediately. "Can I come too? I want to hear about the food in all the countries. Maybe we could try cooking something you ate on your trip?" I glanced at Claire, seeking her approval for this. "Spontaneous plan?" She smiled and nodded. "I can drop them both off around 4. Michael has a late meeting anyway, so there's no rush to pick them up." After they left, I moved through my quiet condominium, reacquainting myself with the space I'd so carefully created. I unpacked my treasures, a small watercolor of Santorini purchased from a street artist, handcrafted olive oil soap from a family-owned shop in Crete, a delicate glass paperweight from a Venetian workshop. Each item represented not just a destination visited, but a moment fully lived, a choice freely made, an experience unfiltered through anyone else's needs or expectations. Together, they formed a mosaic of my emerging identity. Patricia Winters, not defined by what she gave to others but by what she discovered within herself. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized with quiet certainty that my journey had only just begun. The Mediterranean cruise hadn't been a once-in-a-lifetime splurge or a temporary escape from reality. It had been the first step toward an entirely new way of living, one where self-respect wasn't selfish, where joy wasn't a luxury, and where my worth wasn't measured by what I sacrificed for others. The woman who had once been called just a burden had transformed into something else entirely, not through wealth or legal documents or property deeds, though those had played their part, but through the profound inner shift that happens when someone finally recognizes their own intrinsic value. That night, I fell asleep with a smile on my face and dreams of future adventures filling my mind. The journey ahead might not always be smooth. Relationships would still require navigation. Health challenges would still arise. Old habits would still occasionally resurface, but I would face it all with newfound clarity and confidence. I was no longer just Claire's mother, the twins' grandmother, Robert's widow, or Memorial Hospital's dedicated nurse. I was fully, completely Patricia Winters. And that, I had discovered, was more than enough. Spring arrived with a burst of renewal that matched my inner transformation. The trees in the park across from my condominium exploded with delicate blossoms, and I found myself spending peaceful mornings on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching the world awaken. My regular water aerobics classes had expanded to include Tai Chi sessions twice weekly, another gentle practice that improved my balance while easing joint pain. The nursing scholarship fund I'd established was now fully operational. The university had selected the first 3 recipients, all single, parents pursuing healthcare degrees while balancing family responsibilities. Though I'd ultimately allowed the use of my name for the scholarship, I'd declined the formal recognition ceremony the university had proposed. My philanthropy wasn't about public acknowledgement. It was about creating opportunities for others, facing challenges I intimately understood. Claire had surprised me by expressing interest in joining the scholarship selection committee. "I'd like to be involved," she'd said when I mentioned the program's launch. "If that's okay with you? I think I could offer valuable perspective as someone who benefited from a mother's sacrifices for education." Her offer touched me deeply. It represented not just support for my new endeavor, but a genuine recognition of the value of my past, contributions to her life. "I'd love that," I told her sincerely. "Your insight would be invaluable." My relationship with Claire continued to evolve in subtle but meaningful ways. We'd established a new tradition of monthly mother-daughter days that involved neither the twins nor Michael, just the two of us reconnecting as adults with shared history but distinct identities. Sometimes we visited museums or attended concerts. Other times we simply enjoyed long lunches followed by window shopping or walks in the botanical gardens. During one such outing, as we strolled through an art exhibition featuring women painters, Claire asked a question that caught me by surprise. "Mom, if you could go back and do things differently, would you?" I considered her question carefully, watching sunlight filter through the gallery's skylights. "That's complex," I said finally. "There are individual moments I might change, times I prioritized work over presence, or sacrificed my health when it wasn't truly necessary. But the overall path?" I shook my head. "No. Every choice led me here, and here is exactly where I want to be." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking a lot about my own choices lately, about the examples I'm setting for the twins." "What specifically?" I prompted. She sighed, stopping before a vivid painting of a woman standing at a crossroads. "I work constantly. I'm always pursuing the next client, the next project, the next level of success. I tell myself it's to provide security for the twins, but honestly, it's mostly about my own ambition, my need to prove myself." "There's nothing wrong with ambition," I observed. "No, but there's something wrong with never being satisfied, with teaching your children that achievement matters more than contentment." She turned to face me directly. "That's what I learned growing up. Not because you told me so, but because I watched you constantly sacrifice your own joy and well-being for what you thought would make me happy." Her words struck me with the force of revelation. I had never considered how my self-sacrificing behavior might have shaped Claire's understanding of what adulthood, particularly female adulthood, should look like. In trying to give her everything, had I inadvertently taught her that her own needs should always come last? "I'm sorry if that pattern has created pressure for you," I said softly. "That was never my intention." "I know," Claire assured me. "And I'm not blaming you. You did what you thought was best with the resources and understanding you had. I'm just trying to break the cycle before I pass it on to Emma and Ethan." We continued through the gallery, moving from painting to painting, but focused more on our conversation than the artwork. Claire shared her growing realization that her driven professional life was mirroring my workaholic tendencies, albeit in a different field and economic bracket. She'd been reflecting on whether her constant striving for the next high-profile design project was truly necessary for her family's well-being, or merely a habitual response to deep-seated insecurity. Michael suggested I consider scaling back, she admitted, taking fewer clients but charging more, focusing on projects I truly feel passionate about rather than accepting everything that comes my way. "What do you think about that idea?" I asked. "Honestly, it terrifies me," Claire confessed. "What if the clients stop coming? What if I lose momentum? What if I'm not as essential once I'm less available?" I recognized these fears intimately, the same anxieties that had kept me working double shifts even when my body protested, that had made me reluctant to ever say no to requests for help or extra contributions. "Those feelings are valid," I acknowledged, "but ask yourself, essential to whom? And at what cost?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I want to be essential to my children," she said finally. "Not just as a provider, but as a presence, a guide. And I want to reclaim parts of myself that have gotten lost in the constant hustle." "That sounds like a worthy goal," I said warmly. "And I'm here to support you however I can." She smiled at me, her eyes bright with unexpected tears. "You already are. By showing me it's never too late to prioritize joy and self-respect, by demonstrating that boundaries can coexist with love." We embraced there in the gallery, surrounded by images of women at various crossroads, each making choices that would define not just their own lives, but potentially generations to follow. I felt the weight and beauty of this connection, mother and daughter, each learning from the other, each finding her own way forward. The twins continued to be regular visitors at my condominium. Emma had indeed claimed the window seat as her special reading nook, often arriving with a stack of books and spending hours lost in their pages while I worked nearby. Ethan's cooking lessons had evolved into a serious culinary education. We were systematically working through classic techniques from a professional cookbook he'd received for his birthday. One Saturday afternoon in April, as Ethan carefully measured ingredients for a bechamel sauce, he asked a question that had clearly been on his mind for some time. "Grandma, why did you give Mom so much money for so long when she already had plenty?" I glanced up from the vegetables I was chopping, surprised by his directness. "What makes you ask that, Ethan?" He stirred the roux with careful concentration. "I heard Mom and Dad talking. Dad said you'd been supporting them financially even, when they didn't really need it, and that they should have stopped accepting your help years ago." I considered how to respond appropriately without undermining Claire and Michael's parental authority. Sometimes family relationships develop certain patterns that are difficult to change, I said carefully. Your mom and I had established a dynamic where I provided support because that was what I'd always done. It took a significant event for us both to recognize it wasn't necessary anymore. Ethan nodded solemnly. Like when you add too much salt to a recipe out of habit, even though it already tastes fine without it. I smiled at his culinary metaphor. That's actually a perfect analogy. Sometimes we do things out of habit rather than necessity, and it takes conscious effort to change those patterns. "I'm glad you stopped," he said simply, returning to his sauce. "You seem happier now. And Mom and Dad are okay. They still go on vacations and buy stuff. They just talk more about budgets now." His observation warmed me. Children often perceived emotional truths adults tried to conceal, and Ethan had clearly noticed the positive changes in our family dynamic despite the adults' attempts to shield the twins from financial discussions. "The most important things in life aren't about money," I told him. "They're about respect, kindness, and being true to yourself and others." "Like letting me cook real recipes instead of just kid stuff," Ethan noted with the particular logic of a 10-year-old. "That's Respect. Exactly, I agreed, touched by his understanding. Later that evening, after the twins had been picked up by Michael, I received an unexpected phone call from Harold. We'd maintained regular contact since the cruise, exchanging emails about books we'd read and occasional phone conversations about potential future travels. "Patty, I hope I'm not disturbing your evening," he began, his British accent slightly more pronounced over the phone. "Not at all," I assured him. "It's lovely to hear your voice." "I'm calling because I've received an unexpected invitation that I thought might interest you as well. The classical music festival I mentioned, the one in Vienna where I serve on FIAR, the advisory board, has asked me to give a series of lectures on the historical context of this year's featured compositions. I'll be there for 3 weeks in July." "That sounds wonderful," I said sincerely. "What an honor." "Indeed," he agreed. "But here's the part that might interest you. As a lecturer, I'm entitled to bring a guest who would receive complimentary accommodation and festival passes. I wondered if you might consider joining me." The invitation took me by surprise. Harold and I had discussed potential travel plans in abstract terms. But this was a concrete proposal. 3 weeks in Vienna, experiencing world-class classical music performances while exploring one of Europe's most culturally rich cities. "I'd be delighted," I found myself saying before I'd fully processed all the implications. "It sounds like an extraordinary opportunity." "Marvelous." Harold sounded genuinely pleased. "We'd each have our own suite at the faculty residence." "Of course," he added quickly. "I'm inviting you as a friend and fellow traveler. Nothing more presumptuous than that." I appreciated his clarity. At our age, with our established lives and complicated histories, neither of us was seeking romantic entanglement. What we offered each other was intellectual companionship, cultural exchange, and the comfortable camaraderie of contemporaries who enjoyed similar interests. "I understand completely," I assured him. "And I'm truly grateful for the invitation. Vienna has always been on my travel wish list." We spent the next hour discussing practicalities, the festival schedule, flight options, what to pack for Austrian summer weather. By the time we said goodbye, I was already mentally planning the experience, envisioning myself sitting in historic concert halls, strolling through imperial gardens, perhaps even attempting to speak the few German phrases I'd begun learning, through an app on my phone. The next day, I invited Claire for coffee to share my plans. I felt a familiar flutter of anxiety as I prepared to tell her about this extended international trip, an old habit of anticipating disapproval or resistance. When my choices didn't center around family availability, Claire arrived looking harried, her designer handbag overflowing with fabric swatches and paint samples. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized, dropping into the chair across from me. "Client meeting ran over, as usual." "No problem," I assured her. "I appreciate you making time. I have some news I wanted to share with you in person." Something in my tone must have alerted her, because she set aside her samples and gave me her full attention. "What's going on? Everything okay?" "Everything's wonderful," I said, smiling to reassure her. "I've been invited to Vienna this summer for 3 weeks in July. A classical music festival. Harold, my friend from the cruise, is giving lectures there and has invited me as his guest." I watched Claire's face carefully, noting the flicker of surprise followed quickly by a measured neutrality. The old Claire might have immediately expressed concern or raised logistical objections. The new Claire was clearly making a conscious effort to respond differently. "Vienna in summer sounds lovely," she said after a brief pause. "That's quite an opportunity." "It is," I agreed. All the accommodations and festival passes are provided as part of Harold's lecturer package. I'd only need to cover my flights and personal expenses. Claire nodded, still processing. 3 weeks is substantial. The twins will miss you." "I'll miss them too," I acknowledged. but we can arrange video calls, and I'll bring back wonderful stories and souvenirs. Of course. Claire absently stirred her untouched coffee. And Harold is just a friend? The question didn't surprise me. Despite our changing relationship, Claire still viewed me primarily as her mother, someone whose romantic life was either non-existent or not to be acknowledged. Yes, just a friend, I confirmed. We enjoy each other's company and share interests in travel, music, and history. We'll have separate accommodations at the faculty residence. Claire seemed relieved by this clarification. That's good. I mean, not that it would be bad if... I just wouldn't want you to be hurt or taken advantage of. I smiled at her protective instinct. I appreciate your concern, but I'm quite capable of managing my own relationships, platonic or otherwise, at this stage of life. Harold is a gentleman and a scholar in the truest sense of both words. Of course you are, Claire said quickly. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. It's just... This is all still new to me. Seeing you as someone with an independent life that includes international travels and friendships I know nothing about. Her honest admission touched me. It's new for me too, I said gently. But it's a good new, don't you think? For both of us? She nodded, her expression softening. Definitely good, just requires adjustment. She took a sip of her coffee, then asked more practically, what about your medical needs? Will you have access to health care if needed? What about your medications? This was familiar territory, Claire's concern manifesting as logistical problem-solving. But I was prepared. I've already spoken with Dr. Martinez. She's providing a letter explaining my condition and medications in both English and German, plus extra prescriptions in case mine are lost. My travel insurance covers comprehensive medical care, including evacuation if necessary, though that's extremely unlikely. Claire looked impressed by my thoroughness. You've really thought this through. I have, I confirmed. Learning to travel with my condition was one of the most valuable lessons from the cruise. I know my limitations and how to work around them without missing out on important experiences. Our conversation shifted to more practical matters. What I might see in Vienna beyond the music festival, what souvenirs the twins might enjoy, whether Claire had any professional contacts in European design who might be worth connecting with while I was there. As we prepared to leave the cafe, Claire surprised me with a warm hug. I'm happy for you, Mom. Really? This sounds like an amazing opportunity. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by her support. That means a lot to me. Just promise you'll send lots of photos, she added. The twins will want to follow your adventures, and so will I. Absolutely, I assured her. You'll probably get tired of all my Vienna updates. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. Never. I'm just glad you're getting to experience all the things you put off for so long. As she drove away, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the exciting opportunity ahead, but for the evolving relationship that allowed me to pursue it without guilt or justification. Claire was growing, just as I was. We were learning together how to love each other without unhealthy dependencies or expectations. The weeks leading up to the Vienna trip passed quickly. I divided my time between practical preparations, shopping, for appropriate concert attire, arranging for my condominium to be checked regularly during my absence, refilling prescriptions, and special moments with the twins and Claire. Emma insisted on helping me research Vienna's literary connections, creating an elaborate map of cafes where famous writers had worked and bookshops worth visiting. You have to go to Café Central, she declared, showing me pictures of a grand Viennese coffee house with vaulted ceilings. That's where Freud and Trotsky used to hang out, and you need to bring me back a book in German, even though I can't read it yet. Ethan, predictably, focused on Austrian cuisine. You have to try real Wiener Schnitzel, he instructed seriously. and Sachertorta. That's this famous chocolate cake with apricot jam inside. Also, they have these special sausages called Käsekraner that have cheese inside them. Can you believe that? Cheese inside sausage. Their enthusiasm was infectious, their acceptance of my adventure a testament to the new family dynamic we were collectively creating. These children, raised with greater privilege than Claire had known, seemed naturally more accepting of their grandmother as an individual with her own interests and pursuits. A week before my departure, Susan organized a small gathering at her apartment, a combination bon voyage party and early birthday celebration, since I'd be abroad on my actual birthday in mid-July. 64 years young and jetting off to European music festivals with distinguished British gentlemen, she teased as she served homemade cake to our small circle of friends. Who would have imagined this a year ago? Certainly not me, I admitted, accepting generous congratulations from our mutual friends. Most had known me during my years of constant work and sacrifice, and they seemed genuinely delighted by my transformation. The way I see it, remarked Judith, a retired librarian who had often kept the twins occupied with stories when they were younger. You're making up for lost time, but also creating a new template for all of us, showing us it's never too late to reclaim joy and adventure. I'll drink to that, agreed Howard, Susan's neighbor who had recently begun joining our occasional dinner gatherings. He raised his glass of punch in a toast. To Patty, proving that the best chapters may come later in the book. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt a rush of gratitude for these friendships that had sustained me through difficult years and now celebrated my emergence into a fuller, richer life. Later, as Susan and I cleaned up after the others had left, she observed quietly, "You know what I love most about all this? You're not just taking trips or spending money. You're fundamentally rewriting your story, creating a new understanding of who Patricia Winters really is." Her observation resonated deeply. This wasn't merely about indulging in long-deferred pleasures. It was about reclaiming my narrative, recognizing that the story of my life didn't have to be defined solely by what I'd given to others, but could also include what I discovered for myself. 2 days before my departure for Vienna, I received an unexpected delivery, a beautifully wrapped package from Claire. Inside was an elegant leather-bound travel journal, its cover embossed with my initials, and a quote from Audrey Hepburn. "Paris is always a good idea." The accompanying note read, "I know you're going to Vienna, not Paris, but the sentiment applies to any place that makes your heart happy. Fill these pages with wonderful memories. Love, Claire." I ran my fingers over the smooth leather, deeply, touched by the thoughtfulness of her gift. The journal represented more than a practical item for recording my travels. It symbolized Claire's wholehearted endorsement of my journey, both the literal trip to Vienna and the broader journey of self-discovery I'd embarked upon. I called her immediately to express my thanks. "It's perfect," I told her. "I'll treasure." "Height." "I'm glad you like it," she replied, sounding pleased. "I wanted you to have something special for documenting this adventure, something worthy of the experiences you'll have. It means so much that you'd think of this," I said, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. "Not just the journal itself, but what it represents." "I know," Claire said softly. "That's why I chose it. I want you to know I truly support this chapter of your life, Mom. No reservations, no hidden concerns, just genuine happiness for you." After we hung up, I sat holding the journal, reflecting on the remarkable transformation in our relationship. Just 1 year ago, Claire had viewed me primarily as a source of practical and financial support, her expectations narrowly defined by what I could contribute to her comfort and convenience. Now she was actively encouraging my independence, celebrating my pursuit of experiences that had nothing to do with her or her family. The change wasn't just in Claire, of course. I had fundamentally altered the dynamic by refusing to continue in the self-sacrificing role I'd assumed for decades. By valuing myself enough to establish boundaries and assert my own needs, I had inadvertently created space for Claire to develop greater empathy and perspective. Our relationship had evolved from one of unhealthy dependency to mutual respect and genuine affection. The day before my departure, I hosted a farewell dinner for Claire, Michael, and the twins. I prepared all their favorite dishes, including the bechamel-based pasta that had become Ethan's specialty during our cooking lessons. We ate on my balcony, enjoying the perfect summer evening as the sun set over the city park. "Will you write to us from Vienna, Grandma?" Emma asked, helping herself to a second serving of roasted vegetables. "Absolutely," I promised. "I'll send postcards from every interesting place I visit, and we can video chat whenever you'd like, time differences permitting." "Can you send pictures of the food?" Ethan requested predictably, especially those cheese sausages and the chocolate. "Cake with jam." "Of course," I assured him. "I'll document every culinary discovery." Michael raised his glass in a toast. "To wonderful adventures in Vienna. May the music be magnificent, the weather perfect, and the company delightful." "Hear, hear," Claire echoed, clinking her glass against mine. "And to many more adventures in the future." As we enjoyed dessert, a strawberry tart using berries from the farmer's market, I found myself observing each family member with a sense of profound contentment. Michael, relaxed and comfortable in my home, helping Emma with her napkin when she dripped ice cream. Claire, animated as she described a recent design project, her habitual tension noticeably diminished. Emma, her nose slightly sunburned from swim lessons, already planning which books she'd bring to read in her window seat next time she visited. Ethan, proudly explaining the technique for the perfect bechamel to his father, his confidence growing with each culinary success. This was family, not the idealized version I'd once sacrificed everything to create, but a real, evolving constellation of individuals with their own strengths, flaws, and journeys. My role had shifted from self-sacrificing martyr to respected elder, from financial safety net to emotional touchstone. The change had freed not just me but all of us to relate more authentically, to love more genuinely. After dinner, as Claire and Michael cleared the table despite my protests that they should leave everything for me to handle later, Emma approached with a carefully wrapped package. "We made you something for your trip," she announced, with Ethan nodding eagerly beside her. "Open it now, okay?" Inside was a handmade book titled Grandma's Vienna Adventure Guide. Each page featured drawings by the twins, Emma's meticulous illustrations of landmarks like St. Stephen's Cathedral and the Vienna State Opera House, paired with Ethan's colorful renderings of Austrian foods and detailed descriptions of what made each special. "We did research," Emma explained proudly, "and we included maps so you won't get lost. Plus a dictionary in the back with important food words in German," Ethan added, flipping to show me carefully copied vocabulary. Like Käse means cheese, and Kuchen means cake. "This is absolutely the most wonderful travel guide I've ever seen," I told them sincerely, drawing them both into a hug. "I'll take it everywhere with me in Vienna." As they beamed with pride, I caught Claire's eye over their heads. She mouthed silently, "They worked on it for weeks." That small detail, my grandchildren spending weeks creating a personalized guide for my journey, encouraged by their mother who once might have resented any attention diverted from her own needs, moved me deeply. This was the true measure of our family's growth. Not grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but these quiet moments of genuine support and celebration. Later, after everyone had left and I was completing my final packing, I placed the twins' guidebook carefully in my carry-on bag alongside Claire's journal and my essential medications. These items represented the perfect balance I was finally achieving, honoring my connections to those I loved while pursuing my own path of discovery and growth. Tomorrow I would board a plane to Vienna, embarking on a new adventure with Harold and the world of classical music. But tonight, I savored the equally meaningful journey I'd already undertaken, from someone defined solely by what she gave to others, to a woman who had reclaimed her right to joy, adventure, and self-determination. The woman whose name appeared on property deeds had ultimately discovered something far more valuable. Her name on her own life, claimed fully and without apology. Vienna exceeded every expectation. From the moment I stepped off the plane into the elegant efficiency of the Austrian airport, I felt a sense of possibility that had become delightfully familiar in my new life. Harold met me at arrivals, his tall figure easy to spot among the waiting crowd. We embraced like the old friends. We had become comfortable in each other's presence without pretense or expectation. "Welcome to Vienna," he said warmly. "I do believe you're going to fall in love with this city." He was right. The faculty residence where we stayed overlooked one of Vienna's many parks, its windows framing views of chestnut trees and distant spires. My suite was spacious and thoughtfully appointed, with a small kitchenette, a writing desk positioned perfectly by the window, and a surprisingly comfortable bed. Each morning, I woke to birdsong and the gentle bustle of Viennese commuters on their way to work. The music festival itself was a revelation. From intimate chamber performances in historic palaces to grand orchestral productions in world-famous concert halls, each experience deepened my appreciation for classical composition. Harold's lectures provided fascinating context, illuminating the historical and cultural forces that had shaped each piece. I attended every one, sitting in the front row and watching with quiet pride as audiences responded to his engaging, accessible approach to what might otherwise have seemed intimidating material. Between performances and lectures, we explored the city together. We visited the majestic Schönbrunn Palace with its spectacular gardens, toured the Kunsthistorisches Museum with its breathtaking collection of old masters, and spent hours in Vienna's famous coffee houses, savoring rich torts and perfectly prepared coffee while watching the world go by. I documented everything in Claire's journal, not just where we went and what we saw, but how it felt to experience these treasures firsthand. The particular quality of light in St. Stephen's Cathedral, the unexpected emotion that overwhelmed me during a Mozart piano concerto, the taste of my first authentic Sachertorte that had Ethan's descriptions echoing in my mind. True to my promise, I sent the twins postcards from every significant site, addressing Emma's to the literary scout, and Ethan's to the culinary explorer. I included small details I knew would delight them, a mention of the specific breeds of horses at the Spanish riding school for Emma, who had recently developed an interest in equestrian pursuits, and detailed descriptions of Viennese sausage varieties for Ethan. During our second week, Harold introduced me to several of his academic colleagues who were also participating in the festival. Over dinner at a traditional Austrian restaurant, we discussed everything from musical theory to international politics, the conversation flowing effortlessly despite our diverse backgrounds. I found myself contributing confidently to these discussions, sharing perspectives shaped by my medical career and life experiences, without the self-deprecation that might once have characterized my interactions with such accomplished individuals. "You've made quite an impression on Elsa," Harold remarked as we walked back to our residence after dinner. "She's not easily impressed, I assure you." Elsa, a formidable musicologist from Berlin, had engaged me in an extended conversation about the intersection of music and healing, fascinated by my observations about how certain compositions affected patients in hospital settings. "She's remarkable," I replied. "I've never met anyone who can discuss Schubert's final works and the latest neuroscience research with equal authority." "You held your own admirably," Harold noted. "You don't give yourself enough credit for your intellectual capabilities, Patty." His observation struck me as both accurate and outdated. The old Patricia would indeed have diminished her contributions, deflected compliments, positioned herself as less worthy of inclusion in such rarefied company. But I was no longer that woman. "Actually," I said with a smile, "I think I'm finally learning to recognize my own value in all contexts, not just as a caregiver or supporter, but as a thinker and contributor in my own right. Harold nodded approvingly. Well observed. It's been remarkable watching your evolution even in the relatively short time I've known you. My birthday fell during our final week in Vienna. I'd mentioned it casually to Harold, but hadn't expected any particular celebration, content to mark the occasion simply by being in this beautiful city. To my surprise, I woke that morning to find a small package outside my door, accompanied by a handwritten note from Harold inviting me to prepare for a special day. The package contained a delicate silver brooch shaped like a treble clef, elegant, without being ostentatious. Harold's note explained that he'd arranged for us to attend a private recital by one of the festival's most acclaimed pianists, followed by dinner at a restaurant that had been serving Viennese specialties since 1748. The day unfolded like a perfectly composed piece of music. The exclusive piano recital in a salon once frequented by Beethoven himself, a leisurely walk through Vienna's historic streets as Harold shared stories about the composers who had lived and worked there, and finally dinner in a wood-paneled restaurant where waiters in formal attire served traditional dishes with ceremonial precision. "I hope you've enjoyed your birthday," Harold said as we lingered over coffee and a shared slice of Sachertorte. "It's been absolutely perfect," I assured him. "One of the most memorable birthdays of my life." "I have one more surprise," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. "Nothing extravagant, just something I thought might appeal to you." Inside were 2 tickets to a winter performance of The Nutcracker by the Vienna State Ballet, dated for December. "I know it's months away," Harold said, a hint of uncertainty in his usually confident manner. "And presumptuous of me to assume you'd want to return to Vienna so soon. But I'll be back then for a winter lecture series, and I thought perhaps—" "I'd love to come back," I said warmly, touched by both the invitation and the careful way he'd presented it as an opportunity rather than an expectation. "The Nutcracker at Christmas time in Vienna sounds magical." His face brightened. "Excellent. We could make it a proper holiday experience. The Christmas markets, concerts in St. Stephen's Cathedral, perhaps even a side trip to Salzburg." We spent the remainder of the evening planning this future adventure, our conversation flowing easily between practical considerations and shared anticipation. There was no pressure, no hidden agenda, just 2 friends who enjoyed each other's company and shared a love of cultural experiences. As our time in Vienna drew to a close, I realized how profoundly this experience had affected me. Beyond the magnificent music and architectural splendors, beyond the culinary delights and intellectual stimulation, I had discovered a new dimension of myself, a woman comfortable in international settings, engaged with art and ideas, forming meaningful connections across cultural and geographical boundaries. When I returned home, my condo felt simultaneously familiar and slightly different, as though my expanded worldview had subtly altered my perception of my everyday surroundings. The twins pounced on me the moment I arrived, eager for stories and souvenirs. I had brought them each carefully selected gifts, a beautifully illustrated book of Mozart's life for Emma and an authentic Austrian cookbook adapted for young chefs for Ethan. "Did you use our guidebook?" Emma asked eagerly, as she unwrapped her present. "Every single day," I assured her, showing her the now well-thumbed pages with my notes in the margins. "Your maps were especially helpful when I was exploring on my own." "Did you try the Käsekraner?" Ethan wanted to know, already flipping through his new cookbook. "I did," I confirmed. "They were exactly as delicious as you predicted. I have photos to prove it." Claire watched our reunion with an expression of contentment, seemingly genuinely happy to see her children so engaged with my experiences rather than jealous of their attention. When the twins were occupied with their gifts, she embraced me warmly. "Welcome home, world traveler," she said. "You look wonderful, recharged and radiant." "I feel wonderful," I admitted. Vienna was everything I hoped for and more. "And Harold?" she inquired lightly. Was he a good travel companion? The best, I said simply. We're actually planning another trip in December for the Vienna State Ballet's Nutcracker and the Christmas markets. To my surprise, Claire showed no sign of the conflict I might once have expected at this news. No concern about my absence during the holidays. No subtle pressure to prioritize family traditions over personal experiences. That sounds incredible, she said instead. The twins will be disappointed to miss you at Christmas Eve dinner, but we can always celebrate early or late. Or you could even invite Harold to join us when you return. We'd love to meet him. Her generous response moved me deeply. This was the gift I had never anticipated when I first stood up for myself after being called just a burden. Not just my own liberation, but the ripple effects that had transformed my entire family dynamic. Claire had grown from someone who viewed me primarily as a resource to be utilized into a woman who genuinely supported my happiness and independence. The twins were developing a relationship with a grandmother who modeled self-respect and adventure rather than self-sacrifice and limitation. Even Michael had evolved from a somewhat detached son-in-law to a thoughtful ally in establishing healthier family patterns. That evening, alone in my condo after the family had left, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the city in gold and rose. I opened Claire's journal, now filled with Viennese memories, and turned to a fresh page. Instead of recording another travel anecdote, I found myself writing a reflection on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The truest deed to any property, I wrote, is the deed to one's own life, the right to determine its course, to establish its boundaries, to claim its joys without apology or explanation. For too many years, I allowed others to build upon the territory of my existence without recognizing my ownership of that sacred space. The moment I reclaimed that deed, not with anger or bitterness but with clarity and conviction, everything changed. Not just for me, but for everyone whose life intersects with mine. I closed the journal, satisfied with this distillation of all I had learned. From being called just a burden to becoming the author of my own story. From financial sacrifice to flourishing independence. From enabling unhealthy patterns to establishing mutual respect. Each step had been essential to this transformation. The woman whose name appeared on property deeds had discovered something far more valuable. Her name written boldly across her own life, claimed fully and without apology. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.